There are moments late in the day when the house finally goes quiet, when the noise of work and expectation fades, and you are left alone with your own thoughts, sitting still, wondering how much longer you are supposed to wait. I have had those evenings myself. Hands folded, eyes open, heart tired but still hoping, asking God questions I do not always know how to say out loud. Some of you are listening right now from that same place. Not dramatic, not desperate, just quietly weary from carrying more than you ever talk about. Faith does not always look like raised hands or loud praise. Sometimes faith looks like staying gentle in a world that keeps testing your patience. It looks like choosing not to harden your heart, even after disappointment. I want to speak to you from that quiet place, not with excitement, not with promises, but with honesty shaped by prayer and time. Scripture tells us that God works in ways we often don't see. Not rushed, not chaotic, but steady, intentional, and deeply personal. There is a line in the Psalms that reminds us God understands our thoughts from far away, before we speak, before we even fully understand ourselves. That truth has held me together more than once. Many people think God's care always arrives loudly, with signs, announcements, and clarity. But much of what God does grows quietly, like roots under the soil. You may not feel chosen or noticed. You may feel like life keeps passing you by while others move forward. But the absence of noise does not mean the absence of care. I have learned that God often prepares answers long before we recognize the questions, not to impress us, but to protect us. There are seasons when waiting feels like punishment, when silence feels personal, when you wonder if you missed something or misunderstood God altogether. But waiting is not God withholding love. Waiting is often God shaping us so we can receive it without losing ourselves. The book of Proverbs reminds us that wisdom is formed through patience, not through speed or shortcuts, and that patience is not passive. It is active trust. You are not wasting time by growing slowly. You are not behind because your story does not look like someone else's. God has never measured faith by comparison. Some of you have been learning how to rest without guilt, how to say no without fear, how to value peace more than approval. That work matters, even if no one applauds it, even if it feels invisible. Jesus often withdrew from crowds to pray alone, not because he was weak, but because strength is renewed in quiet places. If the Son of God valued stillness, you are allowed to need it too. There are people in your life who are younger than you, not just in age, but in life experience, who are watching you more closely than you realize. Integrity. They notice how you speak when no one is praising you. They notice how you stay kind, even when you could choose bitterness. Sometimes love does not announce itself. Sometimes it grows quietly, through respect and observation, through learning rather than chasing. The Bible tells us that love is patient and kind, not loud, not demanding. Real care often matures silently. It takes time to understand someone deeply enough to honor them well. I am not here to tell you what will happen, or who will step forward. Life does not work that way, and faith is not a transaction. But I am here to remind you that God is never careless with hearts, yours included. Ecclesiastes teaches that there is a time for everything, a time to speak and a time to remain silent, and both seasons are meaningful. Silence does not mean absence. It can mean preparation. It can mean respect. Some of the most sincere gestures I have received in my life came from people who watched quietly before acting. People who chose thoughtfulness over impulse. God himself is described as one who goes before us, preparing the way, not rushing us into moments we are not ready to hold. If you are feeling overlooked, I want you to hear this clearly. Your worth is not defined by how quickly someone responds to you. Jesus spent 30 years in obscurity before beginning public ministry. 30 years of ordinary life, faithful work, private obedience. If God did not rush his own Son, he is not rushing you either. You are allowed to trust that your life has meaning even in ordinary days, even in seasons without big news, even when nothing seems to be happening. Growth is happening, whether you feel it or not. There are times when God allows others to move quietly around us, not to confuse us, but to protect us from pressure and false expectations. Force, without performance, often lasts longer than love that arrives loudly and quickly. The book of James reminds us to be quick to listen and slow to speak. That wisdom shapes relationships more than urgency ever could. If someone is taking their time with you, it may not be hesitation, it may be reverence. I have learned that not everyone who cares for you knows how to express it right away. Some people show love through preparation rather than conversation. God himself prepared salvation long before the world understood its need, working through generations, through covenant and promise. That is not delay, that is intention. I want to speak gently here, because many of you have been hurt by rushed words and empty assurances, and you deserve honesty. Nothing in life is guaranteed except God's faithfulness, and that faithfulness does not always look the way we expect. But it is steady, it is personal, shaped by love, not convenience. You are not forgotten, you are not unimportant, and you are not foolish for hoping carefully. Hope does not have to shout, it can sit quietly and still be strong. Isaiah wrote that those who wait on the Lord renew their strength, not because waiting is easy, but because God meets us there. Strength does not always mean endurance. Sometimes it means learning when to rest, when to trust, when to let go of outcomes. If you have been praying for clarity and all you have received is calm instead, that may be the answer you need right now. Peace is often God's way of saying, you are safe, even when you do not know what is coming next. I want to pause here and let you breathe. You do not need to solve your whole life today. You do not need to understand every relationship. You do not need to force meaning out of every silence. God is present in this moment. Ones. If this message is speaking to you, and you find comfort in quiet reflections like this, you may want to stay connected with the Angelic Lights channel. Not for promises, but for reminders like this one. There is dignity in becoming whole before being chosen, in being grounded before being celebrated. God values your inner life more than your visibility. Jesus spoke often about seeds, how they are planted unseen, how growth happens underground before anyone sees a result. If your life feels buried right now, it may simply be rooted. You are not late, you are becoming. Some of the sweetest moments in life arrive without warning, not because we earned them, but because they were prepared with care. And when they arrive, they do not overwhelm us, they fit us. God does not surprise us to confuse us. He surprises us to remind us that He knows us. I am grateful for the seasons when God protected me by slowing things down, when He allowed me to grow without pressure. Those seasons shaped my faith more than success ever did. If you are learning patience, you are learning something sacred. If you are learning self-worth without external validation, you are learning something powerful. The gospel reminds us that we are loved while still growing, not after we become perfect, not after we prove ourselves. That truth is enough for today. You do not need to rush love. You do not need to chase affirmation. You do not need to fear quiet seasons. God's timing is not random. It is relational. As we come to the end of this reflection, I want to thank you for listening, for staying open, for trusting this moment. If you feel moved, you are welcome to leave a kind word or prayer in the comments, not for attention, but for encouragement shared. And if someone in your life needs calm reassurance, you may choose to share this with. Above all, rest tonight, knowing that God is attentive, even when life feels still. You are held, you are seen, and you are growing in ways that matter. Thank God quietly for what you cannot see yet, and trust Him with what you do not understand. That is faith, and that is enough for now. As the quiet settles again, I want to remain with you a little longer, not to add weight, but to offer steadiness. There is something sacred about staying with a thought instead of rushing past it, about letting truth sink in rather than trying to be inspired. Many people think faith is proven by certainty, but I have learned it is often proven by gentleness, by the way we hold questions without letting them harden us. Some of you have become very good at being strong, so good that others assume you do not need reassurance. But God knows the difference between strength and exhaustion. The Psalms describe God as one who tends to the weary, not by demanding more, but by restoring the soul. Restoration is quiet work. It does not draw attention, but it changes everything. You may not feel restored yet. That does not mean God is absent. It may mean He is working deeper than your emotions can measure. Come into our lives, not to rush us forward, but to mirror what God has already been doing inside us. They notice the growth we barely recognize. Sometimes a younger heart sees sincerity more clearly because it has not yet learned to be suspicious of it. Age does not always bring wisdom, but humility does. And humility is something God cultivates patiently. If you have been humbled by life, if circumstances have slowed you down, that does not diminish you. Scripture reminds us that God gives grace to the humble, not as a reward, but as provision. Grace meets us where effort cannot. Grace covers what striving never could. I want to speak plainly here. You do not need to impress God. You do not need to perform for love. You do not need to be more than who you are becoming. Jesus did not choose disciples because they were polished. He chose them because they were willing. Willing to listen, willing to learn, to stay. Staying is harder than leaving. Remaining soft in a hard season is holy work. If you are still kind, still patient, still open, that is evidence of God's Spirit at work in you. Do not underestimate the power of quiet faithfulness. It shapes futures you may never witness. There are blessings that arrive not because we chase them, but because we made room for them. Room is created through healing, through reflection, through learning when to let go. You have been learning that, even if it has been painful. The Book of Lamentations tells us God's mercies are new each morning, not because we forget yesterday, but because God meets us in today. Today is enough. This moment is enough. You do not need tomorrow's answers to be faithful now. You only need trust for this breath. I have sat with people at the end of their lives, and I can tell you this with certainty. They rarely regret moving slowly. They regret the times they ignored their own peace. God values your peace, because peace guards the heart. When something is prepared with care, it does not rush the moment it enters. It arrives gently. If someone approaches your life with respect, with patience, with thoughtfulness, that reflects something good. Not every good thing announces itself. Some things whisper because they are meant to be handled carefully. You are meant to be handled carefully. I want you to hear that without doubt, without condition, without comparison. Jesus said His yoke is easy and His burden is light, not because life is easy, but because love should not crush you. Anything that demands you abandon yourself is not from God. God never asks you to shrink. He invites you to grow rooted and whole. If you have been learning boundaries, learning discernment, learning when to speak and when to stay quiet, spiritual maturity is not loud, it is stable. The world celebrates urgency. God honors readiness. Readiness looks like peace, like humility, like patience. You are becoming ready in ways you cannot rush. There is no need to read meaning into every silence. No need to assume neglect. No need to fill gaps with fear. Fear does not come from God. Clarity does not always come immediately either. Sometimes clarity arrives after trust, not before. Trust grows through small choices, through staying present, through believing that God's care is consistent. Consistency matters more than intensity. In faith, in love, in life. If this message feels slow, that is intentional. Healing is not fast, truth is not rushed, and faith is not loud. You do not need constant stimulation to be spiritually alive. You need truth that holds when emotion fades. God's presence does not flicker, remains. I want to encourage you to thank God tonight, not for outcomes, but for steadiness. Thank Him for protecting you from what arrived too soon, for lessons learned quietly, for strength built slowly. Gratitude changes how we wait. It turns waiting into trust. As we close this time together, I want to leave you with peace, not expectation, not pressure. If you choose to engage here, to like this message, to leave a word of encouragement, let it be an overflow, not an obligation. And if you stay connected to the Angelic Lights channel, let it be because you value calm reflection, not because you are searching for answers outside yourself. God is already near, closer than you realize. May your night be gentle, your heart be guarded, and your trust be steady. Whatever is unfolding, God is present within it. That truth does not change, and it is enough. Before we part, I want to leave you with something simple, something you can carry without effort. You do not need to interpret every moment. You do not need to decode God's movements. You are not required to understand everything to be held by Him. Faith is not a puzzle to solve. It is a relationship to live within. There will be days when nothing feels clear, when prayer feels quiet, when answers do not come in words. Those days are not empty. They are forming trust beneath awareness. God is not absent in stillness. He is often closest there. If you wake tomorrow without new insight, without direction, without confirmation, you have not failed. You are human, and God knows how to walk at a human pace. Let your life unfold without forcing meaning. Let love arrive without demanding explanation. Let peace come without questioning its timing. You are allowed to receive good things gently. Tonight, rest knowing that God's care does not depend on your effort. It does not withdraw when you are tired. It does not falter when you are unsure. He remains faithful, steady, present. That is enough for this moment, and this moment is enough. Go in quiet confidence, not because everything is resolved, but because you are not alone. And that truth will hold you, even when nothing else makes sense.